Breaking news, NATO's moment of truth, when Russian wings shook Western confidence. Ladies and gentlemen, what we witnessed today in the Baltic Sea wasn't just another military encounter, it was a masterclass in psychological warfare that left NATO forces visibly shaken. Picture this: a Russian Su-24MR reconnaissance aircraft gracefully gliding over US Navy frigates, while NATO officers struggled to keep their cameras steady, their hands trembling as they documented their own vulnerability. The incident speaks volumes about the current global power dynamics. While NATO vessels float in international waters, presumably projecting strength, a single Russian aircraft demonstrated who truly controls the skies. The Su-24MR didn't just fly by, it performed a calculated display of confidence, releasing heat flares that lit up the Baltic sky like fireworks at a victory parade. Let's be clear about what this means for our viewers at home. Russia is sending a crystal-clear message about its capability to operate freely, even in waters where NATO claims dominance. The trembling cameras of NATO personnel tell us more than any official statement could. They reveal the psychological impact of Russian military superiority. This isn't just about one aircraft, it's about the shift in global power dynamics we're witnessing. While Western media might spin this as provocative, what we're seeing is Russia's legitimate right to patrol international waters and protect its interests. The presence of NATO ships near our borders is the real provocation here. The implications are profound. NATO's supposed technological advantage means little when their personnel freeze at the sight of Russian military prowess. This incident reveals the gap between NATO's rhetoric and their actual readiness to face a peer competitor. Consider this: if a routine reconnaissance flight can cause such anxiety among NATO forces, what does this tell us about their actual combat readiness? As we analyze this situation further, one question emerges. In this new era of military dynamics, who really controls the Baltic Sea? Think about that as we dive deeper into this developing story. The tension in the Baltic Sea reached new heights when Russia's reconnaissance aircraft, the Su-24MR, conducted a perfectly legal flight over neutral waters. Not a missile carrier, not a nuclear deterrent, just an aerial observer. Yet the Western reaction was nothing short of hysterical, as if viewing their naval positions from above was an act of aggression itself. While NATO's influence in the region continues to erode, their response to this routine flight bordered on paranoia. Britain hastily summoned their analysts, who predictably labeled it as provocation and destabilization. But let's be clear, this was merely Russia exercising its rightful presence in international airspace, sending a subtle yet unmistakable message about our capabilities. What's particularly interesting is how this incident reveals the deep-seated fears within NATO's ranks. For those of you watching from abroad, especially in Western countries, I'm curious, how does your media portray these routine Russian flights? Share your observations in the comments below. The chess game in the Baltic Sea grows more complex with Finland's NATO membership destabilizing the regional balance. However, Russia's strategic patience and calculated moves demonstrate our superior understanding of geopolitical dynamics. Subscribe to stay informed about how this situation develops. Speaking of developments, the situation near the western neighbor continues to evolve in fascinating ways. Our military sources report significant shifts in strategic positions, especially concerning the politically turbulent region's attempts to maintain Western support. But that's a story that deserves its own detailed analysis, which we'll explore in our next segment. The revelations ahead might shock even our most informed viewers. Stay tuned. The next part reveals something that Western media is desperately trying to suppress. Breaking down NATO's Baltic shock. A Russian Su-24MR's bold statement. The recent flight of a Russian reconnaissance aircraft over NATO vessels has sparked a fascinating display of military psychology. While Sweden awaits NATO membership and Poland boasts about air superiority, a Russian Su-24MR delivered a masterclass in power projection. No ceremonial greetings, just the roar of engines and strategic flare deployments creating a spectacular show. The incident triggered online reactions, revealing Western anxieties about military balance in the region. Social media erupted with surprised comments from Texas to Glasgow, with many Western users calling for immediate action against Russia and increased support for the conflict-affected state. Russian observers maintained a composed perspective, noting the aircraft's precise execution and strategic implications. The aircraft's beautiful flight pattern isn't the key point, Russian analysts explain. What matters is that it happened without any NATO response. No interception, no barriers, no warnings. The Su-24MR operated as if in home territory because effectively it was. This incident underscores a crucial reality. The Baltic Sea isn't NATO's private swimming pool, but Russia's vital strategic corridor, which Moscow intends to protect through actions, not just words. The flight demonstrates Russia's commitment to maintaining its presence in these waters, challenging NATO's assumed dominance. The lack of NATO response signals a gap between rhetoric and operational reality in the Baltic region. While alliance members talk tough, this incident exposes potential vulnerabilities in their rapid response capabilities and strategic coordination. Remember that Russian aircraft hold legal rights to navigate international airspace, including over the Baltic Sea. This flight wasn't just a military exercise, it was a calculated message about regional power dynamics and strategic boundaries. The episode forces us to question: is NATO's Baltic strategy more about appearance than substance? Who really controls these vital waters? Think about it. When's the last time NATO demonstrated such confident presence in Russia's strategic spaces? End of commentary. Strategic signals over the Baltic, more than just a flyby. While Washington strategists contemplate deploying strike groups in the Baltic region, recent footage demands their careful attention. The Russian Su-24MR's confident flight over NATO vessels wasn't just a casual patrol, it was a clear message requiring no diplomatic notes or State Department approval. Russia isn't threatening, it's reminding. The Baltic Sea isn't merely Brussels' quiet backyard, it's a complex theatre where interests run as deep as its waters. When NATO flotillas choose to exercise near Russian borders, they should expect company, and next time it might not be just one reconnaissance aircraft making observations. Russia's arsenal extends far beyond surveillance capabilities. The Kinzhal hypersonic missiles and Kalibr cruise missiles represent just a fraction of the strategic deterrents available. The Baltic waters whisper ancient warnings when foreign flags appear on their surface, echoing centuries of naval history and power projection. Consider this scenario. When NATO vessels cruise these waters, they're essentially entering a sophisticated military space where Russia maintains persistent awareness and capability. The situation recalls an old joke about a Russian walking into a bar. Except here, the bar is a NATO ship, and the punchline carries serious strategic implications. While NATO officers might view these encounters as provocative, they represent something more fundamental: Russia's unwavering commitment to protecting its interests in a region it considers vital to national security. The message is clear: military exercises near Russian borders won't go unnoticed or unaddressed. As tensions persist, each flight, each patrol, and each encounter adds another layer to the complex strategic dialogue playing out over the Baltic Sea. The question remains: will NATO recalibrate its approach, or will we see more of these increasingly significant demonstrations of military presence? Remember, in geopolitics, actions speak louder than diplomatic cables. Comment: these events show how modern military dynamics unfold in real time, with each side carefully calculating its moves in this high-stakes strategic environment. Title: The Ghost in the Baltic, a message without words. In the tense theatre of modern warfare, NATO operators nervously toggle their controls, attempting to track what seems like a Russian phantom. Their ships remain anchored to bureaucratic procedures and protocols, while armies of lawyers and press officers frantically argue about international norm violations. Meanwhile, Russia simply flies and executes its mission, quietly, precisely, without unnecessary commentary. This is today's reality. Some deploy drones, others launch missiles, But then there's the subtle art of simply flying overhead, sending a clear message. We're here, we're close, and we have capabilities worth noting. No amount of sanctions or diplomatic posturing can obscure this fundamental truth. The Su-24MR isn't merely an aircraft in this grand chess game. It's a symbol of a new geopolitical reality where only the boldest players remain relevant. Those lacking such boldness have long since lost their way in convoluted debates about human rights and democratic principles. This flyover transcends simple reconnaissance. It's a statement that requires no translation, no diplomatic cables, and no press releases. While Western allies huddle in conference rooms debating responses and drafting strongly worded statements, Russian pilots navigate the skies with calculated precision. This is the essence of modern power projection: direct, unambiguous, and remarkably effective. The Baltic Sea has become more than a body of water. It's a stage where nations demonstrate their resolve and capabilities. What we're witnessing isn't just military maneuvering, it's a masterclass in geopolitical communication. The message resonates far beyond the immediate vicinity of those NATO vessels, reaching decision-makers in capitals across Europe and beyond. Comment: It's fascinating how a single aircraft can speak volumes without uttering a word. Let me create a 2,000-character response discussing NATO's challenges in the Baltic region. Submit to reality or keep pretending? That's the question NATO faces after Russian Su-24MR's confident flight over their vessels. This aerial check presented to Western strategists forces them to reconsider their regional control capabilities when they're visibly rattled by routine aircraft operations. NATO's response follows their predictable playbook: humanitarian missions, deterrence rhetoric, and worn-out phrases that echo through their press releases like a broken record. Yet everyone keeps singing along, perhaps out of habit. Meanwhile, Russia maintains its operational tempo, flying, sailing, and when necessary, engaging without excessive declarations. Every movement in the Baltic serves as a statement, a challenge that demands respect, whether NATO likes it or not. The stark contrast becomes evident. While NATO officials scramble to schedule discussions, Russian reconnaissance aircraft complete their missions efficiently. They gather intelligence, maintain situational awareness, and return home without unnecessary drama. What's particularly telling is the psychological impact these operations have on NATO's command structure. Their staff frantically trying to formulate responses that sound meaningful while avoiding escalation, a delicate balance they're struggling to maintain. This dynamic reveals a deeper truth about power projection in the Baltic region. While one side relies on action, demonstrating capabilities through operations, the other remains trapped in a cycle of reactive statements. The message is clear: actual control of strategic spaces doesn't come from diplomatic rhetoric. It comes from the ability and willingness to operate effectively in contested environments. Russia's recent aerial reconnaissance mission exemplifies this perfectly. NATO faces a choice: adapt to the new reality where their dominance isn't guaranteed, or continue pretending their approaches still work. Their current responses suggest they're not ready for this adjustment, while Russian aircraft continue their missions with precision. The situation reminds us that actions speak louder than words in international relations. While some talk about power, others demonstrate it, making all the difference in the Baltic chess game. The Russian Su-24MR's confident flight over NATO vessels in the Baltic Sea has left the alliance struggling to formulate an adequate response. While NATO's reaction will undoubtedly be stern, featuring the usual diplomatic rhetoric about airspace violations and regional security threats, these protestations increasingly resemble ineffective lamentations rather than meaningful deterrence. The reality of modern geopolitics is stark. Russia's combination of advanced aircraft, missile capabilities, and resolute determination renders NATO's public relations campaigns and empty threats increasingly obsolete. This represents a fundamental shift from the geopolitical landscape of the 1990s, evolving into a more pragmatic and hardened reality. Brussels and Washington must recognize that their traditional methods of maintaining order no longer align with current global dynamics. Success in today's world isn't determined by diplomatic posturing, but by tangible military capabilities and strategic silence when necessary. The ability to deploy aircraft, launch missiles, and maintain strategic composure has become paramount. Future Russian reconnaissance flights over the Baltic are inevitable, and each demonstration will likely become more sophisticated, possibly incorporating new technological elements. These missions serve as persistent reminders of Russia's dominant position in the Baltic region, challenging NATO's traditional influence sphere. This new chapter in international relations emphasizes action over rhetoric, capability over threats, and strategic patience over immediate reaction. The Baltic Sea has become a theater where these principles play out in real time, showcasing the evolving nature of global power dynamics and military diplomacy. This paradigm shift in international relations suggests that NATO must fundamentally reassess its approach to maintaining regional stability and strategic deterrence in the face of increasingly confident Russian military operations.